Welcome back to the channel. It is mighty cold and windy out here today. We got our little bit of snow dusting here. We had high 20s overnight or mid 20s overnight, and it didn't really get much over that right now. So it's maybe 30 degrees outside. So as winter's setting in here, earlier and earlier it feels like. I mean, it's November here. We just start November and get some snow. It's pretty ideal, right? So I wanted to share all the things that we can do and have been doing and still need to do to get our greenhouse and greenhouse space ready for winter and dealing with those winter temperatures. Like I said, last night was freezing cold, mid 20s or something, and our tomatoes are frozen solid. We've got buckets of ice water outside. We weren't ready for the cold weather just yet. So it's a real cold snap, and hopefully we have a little bit more warm weather to work outside because we've got a lot to do to get ready for our John Payne heating, and we've got to do it one way or the other. Whether there's snow, rain coming down, or whether it's absolutely freezing outside, we still got to do it. So we're hoping for a little bit better weather in the next coming weeks. So today we'll be covering a wide range of things that we do and still have to do to get ready for winter in our greenhouse, like getting your windows sealed up and doors and all those kinds of things. There's a lot of little tips, tricks, and ideas, and a lot of things we're doing. As I'm looking around, you guys can't see all the stuff I got going on, but there is a total cluster in this greenhouse. So I've been in and out of the greenhouse a little bit here. The thermometer blowing in the wind from the door not being sealed up, but it's sitting 52 degrees right there. And that is pretty darn cold, but you can see my door's cracked. I have a little cord running out here for my little solar bubbler, and it's spitting up a few bubbles here and there. So we've just got some simple compost tea here. Show the camera. It's a little dark. We've got a lot of nitrogen in there from our grass, little grass wad. We've got this little solar powered bubbler, and this thing works amazing. It's got two lines out, so even on a very cloudy day like this, we're getting a few bubbles coming out of there, and it's still aerating and moving the water. And on a halfway sunny day, it's fully active and it's just churning the water. So using a little drawstring sack just like this, cotton or whatever you're going to use, you can throw a handful of stuff in there and keep all the particulates out. That way you can still pump it out of here without having to use your hand to actually fill up a container and dump it. You can just use a pump and spray it like we do. So just turning the camera around, keeping it in the same exact spot, you're looking at a nice simple cold frame, and this really helped. I mean, our greenhouse didn't get that cold last night. My little thermometer showed that it was like 45 or maybe 47, I think I saw. So it was not detrimental, but that was pretty darn cold. So that lets me know that I had to come out here and make sure all my windows are sealed up, loosen up all of my window actuators so they're not super tensious, so they're ready to close up and seal tight, because I'll adjust them in the springtime so they definitely will open up at full capacity. And in the fall time, when it's those tricky times, I'll reel it back in and I'll just unscrew it all the way, and then it has a little bit more pull to it and draws that window a little tighter. And taking anything you can and sealing around your window for a better seal. You really don't want to seal your windows up all the way because it can get kind of tricky, and you don't want to kill everything. As you're trying to protect it from the cold, you don't want to kill it from the heat. So keeping those window actuators intact and hooked up. We don't want to keep them up all winter long, but I usually do have them out till midwinter. But we kept the greenhouse so warm that these didn't get damaged. They never got frozen solid or anything like that. And they did open up on certain days in the winter when it was full sun, baking in here. We needed to release some of the heat, some of that moisture, and venting it was the only way. And those automatic actuators to open on each end of our 50-foot greenhouse. We got another one down there. We're going to check that end out. We're just trying to make our way through the greenhouse, and I'm trying to cover all the topics. So sealing up your doors and windows is the main thing I wanted to talk about. So I had all these extra windows, and that's the first topic. So making sure that all of your doors do not come open. We've had that happen. We've had windows come open, and we've lost quite a few plants just to accidents and not paying attention. You know, sometimes we get careless and we forget about things, and then we pay the price. So learning from our own mistakes, we want to make sure those doors are nice and tight, those windows are nice and tight, and then you want to make sure that everywhere around the greenhouse is sealed up tight. You don't want wind blowing up from underneath or wind blowing in from your sides, or like I said, your doors and windows. So we can keep on moving. I just wanted to check this out. We are still getting some decent growth in this bed for potatoes and onions and stuff. Just wanted to zoom in there. So before I set the camera down here, right behind me on this bed we were just filming on with the potatoes. We had all of our hoops, all of the extra hoops we have left. We have some of our hoops up down there. That's another topic, but we're stopping at this little bed here. I really didn't want to pass up those hoops because I might forget to talk about them, and they are very important. All those extra hoops and extra poly we had over there, we're going to roll tunnels over everything in this greenhouse for winter time. So just jumping down about 3 feet, we had our potato bed, and then we've got this huge microclimate right next to it. We've got a whole bunch of different varieties throughout the greenhouse, and planting a variety allows you to spread those risks and diversify all of the crops and potential nutrient harvests throughout the winter time. So stopping on this bed, we've got all our onions, all of the lettuces, kales, we've got some basil still alive, some toothache herb, a little bit of everything, some of our potted plants from the market and stuff, and we're even seeing little marigolds sprouting on the ground there. Absolutely crazy, just marigolds dropping and sprouting. We're seeing tomatoes, peppers, all types of stuff sprouting right now in the beginning of November. Now, as we're stopped here at this little spot, I want to talk about flooring and insulation. So we use insulation on the outsides of the greenhouse, and we dug it up and we insulate it down. Not the entire thing. We plant about 6 inches away or maybe a foot away from the exterior, and we don't have any issues with that. We can plant closer when we have our insulation. We got 1-inch variable solid wall insulation along one entire bed, and we ended up doing it on the darker side of our greenhouse, so it doesn't really benefit us a whole lot other than keeping a whole lot of perennials protected this winter, which they should stay alive anyway, but being that they're potted, coming out of pots and bare rooted, they may have more issues, so protecting them might be a good thing. So insulating the floor, the outside, and insulating your greenhouse itself. Your plastic has a value of like 0.85. It has less than 1 R value. So having 2 of them together like we do and having a dead air gap of 6 to 8 inches all the way around gives us quite a bit of R value compared to just 1 layer of poly. And we've got at least 6 to 8 inch width on our baseboards. All of those were free sourced and scrap boards. So we put a whole bunch together, fixed them together however we had to, and stake them in the ground. And this whole entire thing, I'll show you all the way to the door there. You can see the door, how it's built up, and the soil is kind of built into it. So we've got a good 4 inches of that baseboard buried into the ground, really holding this down and making it like a bunker. That wind doesn't get underneath it. The ground outside and all of the plants and vegetation really don't allow anything to get underneath. We have really good protection around us with all of our pine trees and stuff. So the winter times can be very brutal with the wind, and it just saps the heat right out of your greenhouse, and insulation is everything in winter. Another thing is flooring. We have all of this brick flooring, free sourced again. Everything we use is free recycled. So being able to have this nice stone floor is going to pick up a lot more heat than all of this dry soil will. So sourcing brick or stone for some extra heat source on your floor is not a bad idea. I really like having this stone floor and my live floor. I can work all these beds around, and everybody who's followed the channel can see everything as it moves, and it's very cool to be able to manipulate it, and everything finds its place out of its purpose. Looking behind me here, we have a sea of strawberries. I've got red strawberries, I've got a ton of little green strawberries, we've even got a little bit of rhubarb back here and on the other side. Everything's doing very well in here, and we're just propagating away with these strawberries. These will stay green almost the whole entire winter. They might not produce in the middle of winter, but I'm getting strawberries right now, and I'm not having any outside. They're barely even doing anything. They're just going dormant on me. So having a nice patch dedicated to strawberries is very important to me and my kids. So I stopped here because the next topic is talking about your shade cloths. You want to get those shade cloths off, and as long as you have your window actuators open, you shouldn't burn up any crops if you're up in the north. If you're down in the south, you might have to keep shade cloths all year long. So keeping that snow off of your shade cloth is very important. Just come out and shake it or take it down, get that snow off there, because the shade cloth will make the snow stick 10 times worse. If you get a heavy wet snow and it's not windy, it's going to stick regardless. You can't do anything about it, but it's easy to break up. You can use a leaf blower or a broom or whatever you can without damaging your greenhouse to get that off of there. But if you have a shade cloth, it's not gonna come off easy. You'll have to drop the entire thing. On the flip side of that, if you've got some type of insulation blanket you can put over your greenhouse, I would suggest doing that. I want to experiment with that, but possibly not with this greenhouse. It's 50 foot long, and that's going to be an expensive blanket to get strapped down, and I worry about it getting ripped apart in the winter. So I'm just gonna go with what we've got, and we've made it through 2 winters, 3 winters already. So we'll be going into this winter doing the same thing we've always done and hoping for the best. So let's turn around here real quick in the same spot. So moving this tomato out of the way, you can see all these little heading collards here. Those are doing very well. Now I pulled these heading collards up out of the garden and they're actually regrowing. I did it with a fork so I didn't damage the roots, and it shows. We did soak these in a little bit of ice water to get all of the bugs off and stuff, and it really rejuvenated the plants once they got back into the soil. So very, very good. Everything's looking very healthy. I don't see any worms. We've got some peas popping up randomly in here, some cilantro and some other heading collards. Looking back there, we've got random crops, tons and tons of peas coming up here. So we've got all these peas. Those leaves are good to eat. Even if I don't get a harvest from these peas, the leaves taste just like the pea. They're super sweet. I love to eat them. So being able to have this to harvest from is pretty neat in itself. Everything looks pretty darn good. And like I said, little tomatoes coming up there. So I'm gonna let those go as an experiment. Some of our cilantro came to the surface here. So the next thing I wanna talk about as we look into this bed is heat storage and using hoops and stuff like that. I mean, this is a form of heat storage, and I have other stuff in mind. Passive solar heating and passive solar heating experiments. So heating for free and doing whatever you can to lessen the burden of paying for heat. So looking behind me, everything is doing well. You can see that everything I planted is alive and doing well. And I just pulled these covers up. I had them over last night because I knew it was going to be very cold, but nothing in this greenhouse died. Everything's doing very well. So as I'm kind of getting off topic there, I want to talk about the passive storage ideas. Right behind me, I showed this several times as I was moving around here. So that large tank is full of water and it's orange right now. We will drape our plastic poly stuff. We have some plastic pond liner we draped over it to increase the opacity, and it really warmed it up better, and it did work a little bit better just to warm that 55-gallon drum up. And we've got a whole lot of tanks. We've got 130 and 120-gallon tank on each end to stay off the cold from each door and window. That's where we have the greatest amount of cold coming from. So putting the heat where you need it, right down at the crops, or keeping the cold from seeping in at the weakest points, you're definitely gonna have good success if you keep all those things in mind when you're designing, because I've learned the hard way and I've done things backwards, and just getting everything laid out and getting it ready for winter can be a task. So we've got our wood stove here. We've got a whole bunch. We've got free logs. We've got a whole bunch of free wood chips, all drying out a whole bunch of free sources of fuel. We are going to burn that throughout the winter, and we run a whole bunch of heating experiments to add upon the heat that we're able to produce from the wood. We're storing it better, and we're putting it into water. We're putting it into clay bricks. Like these clay bricks behind me will hold residual heat well into the night. So there's a lot of ideas and ways to build upon a fire source or any type of fuel source actually burning using some type of combustion inside the greenhouse, whether you're paying for it or not. So obviously storing heat into water is what it's all about. This looks like a mess right now because I'm getting everything cleaned up, and we've been running all of this water down through there, just basically breaking up all of the soil, because that soil is so darn hard. There is rocks and it's like clay, and it is so compacted deep down there underneath the beds that we had established that we were just building upon it instead of digging down. And we really are having a hard time getting through this soil. We almost got to use a pickaxe to get through it. That pitchfork down there, that short fork, is about the only thing that's breaking up the rocks because a shovel isn't cutting it. So by hook or by crook, any method necessary, using wood chips, using charcoal, using lump coal, using stuff that you pay for, stuff that you create, free logs you cut up, using natural gas, using a methane system, using electricity, solar power, by any means necessary, it usually costs quite a darn bit to heat anything. And heating a greenhouse is one of the hardest things to do because you are losing all of that heat all the time to Mother Nature, and every time your air is brushed around and your outside air brushes around, you're losing a little bit and it's exchanging your heat. So putting heat into a greenhouse needs to be taken with the utmost care because your insulation factors directly relate to how much you're going to spend to heat and how much heat you're going to lose. So that led me to do everything as free as possible. You can check out our whole channel for a whole bunch of free heating ideas. I just wanted to share everything that we're doing and going through the greenhouse as we're getting ready for winter and to hit all the main topics. So just to give everybody ideas and to not forget to do certain things because we're guilty of that also. So I'm gonna kick this solar powered water pump on here. So even on a cloudy day, we're able to get that solar power to run, and we're using it to pump the water out of that tank. All of that fish water, we want to clean it out before we start heating with it, and we don't want to gunk up our systems, and we really don't want to break any of those pumps or parts to heat our greenhouse. So those are all crucial, vital parts that we need all winter. So just using an old pump to pump all of that water out of there, get the tub cleaned up. And this is basically the way that we're excavating our pond. I'm gonna pull this up here. So just getting back a little further, you can see how we've been kind of working all this out and how the moisture is really allowing us to break all that up. This stuff is super hard. It's like getting through concrete. So using water is about the only way that we're able to get through it. And not only that, it's kind of building up and showing the pond area for itself. So it's kind of just valleying through, and we're just excavating it up and we're letting it dry over on the side here. So sifting through, finding a ton of rocks, just a massive amount of rocks. I wanted to show the moisture. You can see where the moisture is. You can see the clear moisture lines all the way around. This soil is super dry. Our walkway, you can see how dry it is. This bed hasn't been watered much. It didn't really have crops over here. So we're just trying to use the water the best we can instead of feeding all those plants. We already fed all of the plants in the greenhouse. I don't want to overdo the nutrients in the soil and cause fungus growth or anything like that. So once we put all that fish water down, we watered it in and it's good to go. But if we continued to put too much fish water and stuff like that on the plants and top dress, and it could get stagnant and it could start to grow fungal matter, and that's going to inhibit root growth and not be good on your plants. And especially in the middle of winter when you got them covered up in tunnels, there is so many rocks in all this stuff, everything. It's like mixing concrete when we're actually mixing it. There's so many rocks in here, so it's almost like gravel. We're getting it out, we're getting it dry, and then we're using what we can in sandbags. So I thought everybody would enjoy this little edible acres style creation as we're working our pond out. We're going to be turning this into a small catfish pond. It's not nearly developed right now. It's going to be quite large. So once we get our bearings on a little bit of bullhead farming, we may do channel catfish and stuff outside in ponds. So we're gonna kind of get our hands into catfish farming here via my kids. They really want to do the fish farming and stuff like that. So it's gonna be pretty interesting. We're gonna see what we can do here. And I really love water features. So having water features in the greenhouse is always good. It's going to bring in benefits and beneficials, all your frogs and stuff like that, and you can have food growing in it. We can grow catfish or tilapia and be able to eat that throughout the winter time, especially if we keep it warm enough in here to keep those fish alive throughout the winter. So I feel like I touched on everything I wanted to pertaining to what we need to be doing in winter time and preparing and getting ready. And I'm sure I forgot stuff. So if there is something I didn't mention, drop in the comments because somebody might like to come through and read that comment. It may benefit somebody somewhere down the line. So I really appreciate all the subscribers, all the comments we get, all the questions, all the interaction. I really appreciate you guys. And I just really appreciate all of the growth we've got on the channel. I really appreciate it. We're doing well, and I just want to keep sharing everything we're doing as cheaply as possible. Keep looking out for multiple videos coming out. We're going to be dropping a ton of stuff as we're getting very busy in the greenhouse here.